All praises to the Most High, Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Raha Kodash. Double honors to the elder apostles and elder bishops of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations to the hopeful elect, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, laboring in His truth in all sincerity. Joel chapter 2, verses 28 and 29, KJV. And it shall come to pass afterward, that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams, your young men shall see visions, and also upon the servants and upon the handmaids in those days will I pour out my spirit.
I fast forward in time to a place where robots are everywhere, and it's not a chance you don't see robots every step you take, and then they have these machines in the restaurants and food centers you want to buy from, so it's like a 3D printer. But what I see is that when they 3D print the food, like for example you want lasagna or hamburger, it's fine. They just 3D print it. But you know what they put inside? They put false nutritions and also insect bits. I saw, but the people who eat it can't see it because it's already covered by the 3D printer. And then the food is like, it tastes like it, smells like it, and looks like it, but it's not it. It's just harmful chemicals they're putting in your body. And then I fast forward in time a little bit, and then I see this store. This store had this camera at the door, and then when you go inside, this camera takes a pictures of you, and then they can find out your personal detail and every single secret you've been keeping in your life. And then when you go inside the store, they don't really sell like fruits or like vegetable or meat anymore sometimes, but what they sell, it's some kind of chemicals which are in special packages. So I'm like, what is this? I also don't know what's that, but this is what just God showed me. And then when they want to check out to buy those stuff, I see their right hands with a chip inside. Only I could see it, but it was inside their hands. So when they want to buy it, there was a square, and then they put their hand like this, and then it had teeth, and then you would buy the stuff. It will also say how much you have in your bank, how much you have left in your bank, and how much you spend for this day in this store, and a lot of details.
So we just saw a young Moabite or possibly Ammonite. And I'm also not ruling out the possibility of this young kid being an actual Israelite, but nonetheless, he's speaking of a vision that he had of robots and, of course, the defiled foods that we now have in our food supply in these grocery stores. And somewhere around the 1 minute 40-second mark of this particular video, he says in this vision he also saw a store in which people had a chip in their hands and had to scan their hand in order to make a purchase. And there's one thing for certain: you'll never see anyone having a vision and speaking of that vision, and they're saying that they saw someone in this particular vision trying to make a purchase, and the cashier or the AI robot started asking them if they slept with a white woman in order for that potential buyer to complete that purchase. You'll never see someone speaking of a vision that they had that was given to them by the Most High, Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, and that particular cashier or AI robot starts asking the potential buyer if they committed any sins on that particular day, or if they're a Christian, or if they're carrying a picture of Caesar Borgia in order for them to complete their transaction. Which just goes to show you how nonsensical and ridiculous those particular doctrines are for those who teach and believe that foolishness. I mean, seriously, you would have to walk in the store, or you would be trying to make an online purchase and then you're asked, did you sleep with any white women today? And if you reply no, then your transaction fails. You won't be able to complete your purchase. But then let's say later on, you go back to that same store, you go back to that particular website, and this time you answer yes. As a matter of fact, I did sleep with a white woman earlier. It must have slipped my mind. And then you're able to make that purchase. I mean, it's those type of stupid doctrines like that, which just shows you the reason why there's only one camp that is known for having 100% truth. And that is Great Millstone, starting with the apostles and the bishops and the rest of the hopeful elect of GMS. So let's get into Revelation chapter 13, verse 16. And also verse 17. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. And we know that that mark is an actual physical mark. It is an actual physical thing that is going to be inserted or implanted into your hands, either one of them, or your forehead. Let's get into this word charagma here. The Greek word for mark is charagma, a stamp, an imprinted mark of the mark stamped on the forehead or the right hand as the badge of the followers of the Antichrist. The right hand is just meaning your strong hand. So this can either go in your left or right hand. Also, it says the mark branded upon horses, a thing carved, sculpture, graven work of idolatrous images. So this stamp or this imprinted mark, it is not a white woman. Like the mark of the beast being a white woman is just foolishness. It's an actual printed mark or stamp, some type of device that will be inserted or implanted into your forehead or your right or left hand, whichever one is your strong hand. And even if you had a tattoo of a white woman on your hand or forehead, that wouldn't stop you from being able to conduct daily transactions in this particular society. And this particular stamp on this or this imprinted mark, it's not an embargo. I know that was a doctrine floating around some years ago, which is just foolishness. How could this stamp or imprinted mark that prohibits you from buying or selling, how could that be an embargo? And you had people that just soak that up. Doesn't matter how ridiculous it was. People just went along with it without question until here we are now in 2025, almost 2026. And I do believe that that doctrine has been terminated. I haven't heard anybody mention that lately, but I do still hear that the mark of the beast is sleeping with white women, or it's Christianity, or a picture of Caesar Borgia, so you get a tattoo of Caesar Borgia on your hand or your forehead. That's not going to stop you from buying or selling. And like I mentioned earlier, this particular stamp or this imprinted mark, it's not sin in all of its form. You're not going to walk in the store. You're not going to try to make an online purchase and then someone asks you, or the AI robot is going to ask you, hey, did you commit any sins today? And you say, no, I didn't commit any sins. Oh, well, you can't buy this. And then your transaction fails. That's just foolishness. And it just goes to show that, some people walk around saying that, the Holy Spirit is working with them, or, that we just kind of know it's lies. It's people are just throwing out a bunch of miseducated guesses out there at this point. A lot of it is pride. You don't want to admit you're wrong because you feel you might lose followers, or you realize that for all these years you've been calling yourself a prophet or a teacher. But here we are right now, right at the precipice of this thing being mandated worldwide, and you still have people calling themselves prophets or teachers and cannot actually see what this particular mark is. So for the 13 millionth time, here we are once again going back into what this is. And this is, sometimes it just has to keep getting repeated until you stiff-necked Israelites out there get the proper understanding, and until you also acknowledge that GMS has always been on point. They've always been 100% right with this breakdown. But this is also more so in the case that there are any younger people out there who are coming into the truth, they'll have the proper interpretation of this scripture. And if they're of the elect, they'll have the proper understanding anyway, as pursuant to Matthew 24 and 24, in so much that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. That is paraphrased. So, once again, Revelation 13 and 16. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. And that is pretty much lines up with what the young kid at the beginning of this particular video said that he saw in his vision. He said he walked in a store. In this particular vision, he said he saw a store in which there was a camera, and as soon as you walked in, that camera took a picture of you, and it had all of your details, as far as your, whatever pertinent information, social security number, that type of stuff. It said it had all of its details, and in order for you to complete a purchase, you had to scan your hand at that. He actually did say he saw a chip in people's hands in this particular vision. So let's see what the charagma was here in ancient Rome and how it was used and what it was used for. So I think I typed in ancient Rome, was the charagma. In ancient Rome, did people volunteer to receive the charagma or something to that effect? I don't remember exactly how I worded it, but it brought me here. In the context of ancient Rome, the charagma was a forced requirement rather than a voluntary choice, at least in practice, with severe consequences for refusal. The book of Revelation explicitly states that people were compelled to receive it, to participate in daily life, especially commerce. So as we can see, this is not the first time that this is happening, and we do know that Babylon the Great here, this is the reincarnation of Rome. Nothing is new under the sun. So once again, I'll read that. In the context of ancient Rome, the charagma was a forced requirement rather than a voluntary choice, at least in practice, with severe consequences for refusal. The book of Revelation explicitly states that people were compelled to receive it to participate in daily life, especially commerce. Once again, that was not an embargo. That was not sleeping with white women. That was not sin in all of its forms, or whatever other miseducated guesses are being thrown around out here. This was an actual forced requirement, and it was an actual physical mark that people were receiving in ancient Rome. The charagma, Greek for mark or imprinted mark, in this historical context of the early Christian era, referred to the Roman imperial stamp or seal that appeared on official documents, and more commonly on Roman coins. The stamp typically featured the image and name or title of the emperor, who was considered a deity or savior and benefactor of the world. And we know that right now, those particular documents or any type of currency that we have, they're getting rid of all of the, paper currency. That's not going to be a thing. It's going to be replaced with digital currency. So as far as documents, things such as social security numbers, driver's licenses, birth certificates, the charagma would have been stamped on those type of documents in the past in ancient Rome as well. But we know that the technology that they have today, they are capable of putting your driver's license number, social security number, all of your birth certificate information on these type of documents. On an actual chip itself that would be inserted into your actual skin, your hand, or your forehead. The system functioned as follows. Economic coercion. To buy or sell in the Roman Empire, one had to use Roman currency, which bore the emperor's image. Now, once again, we do understand that in modern day Rome here, this is going to be digital. The currency that we know today it's going to actually be replaced with digital currency. So the mark, in order to buy and sell in the modern empire, you're going to have that mark, just like in the ancient Roman Empire. To buy or sell in the Roman Empire, one had to use the Roman currency, which bore the emperor's image. Refusing to use these coins meant economic exclusion, as one could not participate in trade or acquire basic necessities. Allegiance as idolatry for early Christians whose faith prohibited the worship of false gods. Using these coins or participating in the associated imperial cult practices, such as offering a pinch of incense to the emperor's image, was considered a form of idolatry. This made it a matter of profound spiritual and moral choice, and they are going to eliminate that altogether here. Now it's going to be, once they put this in your skin, if you refuse it, you just will be excluded out of the daily transactions that people normally need: paying your rent, paying your car note, car insurance. If you take public transportation, you won't be able to get around back and forth to work. If you have kids, you won't be able to put them in daycare unless you're scanning your hand. Anything that you can think of: food, clothing, shelter. Even if you just want to go out and have fun, if you want to go to a movie theater, to a mall, anything that requires some type of monetary transaction, all of that's going to be done digitally. But this time, instead of it being coins like they did in the past, there won't be any physical currency. It's actually going to be in your hand. That is how you will make your transactions, either scanning your hand or your forehead. Persecution. While some interpretations of Revelation view the mark as primarily symbolic of spiritual allegiance, that is incorrect. We know that this is not a symbolic thing here. It's not a symbolic gesture of spiritual allegiance. This is an actual physical mark. Historical accounts from periods of persecution, such as under Emperors Nero and Decius, describe more direct coercion. During the Decian persecution, somewhere around 250 AD, for instance, citizens were required to obtain a certificate, libellus, I believe that's Latin, proving they had performed a sacrifice to the Roman gods. Those without this proof faced severe penalties, including death. Therefore, individuals did not generally volunteer for the charagma out of personal desire, but were forced into a situation where accepting it was the only way to survive within the Roman social and economic system. Refusal came at the cost of one's livelihood and potentially one's life. And this is exactly where we're heading again right now. Nothing is ever new under the sun. It's just modernized now. So I also have another something else that I came across. I typed in charagma in ancient Rome. In ancient Rome, charagma was a Greek term for an imprinted mark or stamp, most famously used to denote the imperial seal on official documents and the likeness of the emperor on coins. It also referred to a brand used on disobedient slaves, a religious brand for devotees, and even religious tattoos on soldiers and followers. The term was later used in the New Testament to refer to the mark of the beast in Revelation, symbolizing allegiance to the Antichrist and control over economic life. Meanings of charagma in ancient Rome. Imperial stamp. The charagma was a physical seal on official Roman documents featuring the emperor's name and date, which validated the document. And once again, the need for an actual physical birth certificate, driver's license, social security number, or anything of that effect, passports, anything like that. Now they do have the technology to put all of that information on the physical mark itself. Once again, this is, like they said, this was a physical seal on official Roman documents. The only difference is now technology is a little more advanced. It doesn't have to be an actual physical document. Now the physical mark itself, the physical charagma itself, will be an implantable RFID micro chip that will be inserted or implanted into your hand or forehead. Coinage. It represented the emperor's image stamped on coins, serving as a symbol of his authority. In this particular case, This is the beast's system here. So the actual coinage is going to be replaced with a digital currency. Branding, it was a physical brand used to mark disobedient slaves, indicating ownership similar to branding cattle. Yes, and that is how it's going to be in modern day Rome, aka Mystery Babylon, aka America. It was used as a physical brand used to mark disobedient slaves, but in this particular case today, everyone who gets this mark is going to be a slave to the system, basically stating that you would rather cling on to this beast system, which we can clearly see is failing, as opposed to waiting it out, as opposed to praying, fasting, doing whatever you have to do to endure this until the kingdom comes. Religious marking. Soldiers would brand themselves with the name of a favorite general. Devotees use tattoos or brands to show their loyalty to a specific god. Sculpture. The term could also refer to an engraved or carved image, such as an idolatrous image mentioned in the book of Acts. Connection to the mark of the beast. The New Testament book of Revelation uses charagma to describe a symbolic mark that prevents people from buying or selling without it. This symbolizes the ultimate act of allegiance to the Antichrist. Yes, that's what I just said. This right here is that moment. This is the hour of temptation. Are you so caught up in this beast system in terms of your normal everyday routine, whatever that is? You get up, you make your online purchases, you go, whether you go to the mall, whether you go wherever, everything revolves around commerce in this particular type of system that we live in. How do you function when you're unable to participate in this society? And that's going to actually make a lot of people feel compelled to get it. Some people are going to feel like they have to get it out of necessity. How do you get your paycheck? How do you have access to your funds without it? Some people just love this place so much and they're just going to do it because they don't want to be left out of having fun. Things that people love going to, like amusement parks, malls. People love going to these type of things. And the moment that stuff is going to be cut off from you, you're going to see exactly where people's allegiances actually lie. Their allegiances will not be with the Most High, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, and his kingdom, which is forth to come. Their allegiances are going to be to this particular beast system here. This symbolizes the ultimate act of allegiance to the Antichrist, tying together the concepts of the emperor's likeness on coins and the branding of slaves and devotees. So with that being said, let's go into Ecclesiastes chapter 1. And we'll start with verses 9 and 10. Like I said, this is modern day Rome here. And everything is just replaying itself, just like Ecclesiastes 1 verses 9 and 10 says, the thing that hath been, it is which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun. Is there anything whereof it may be said, see, this is new? It hath been already of old time, which was before us. Let's read that in the NLT, starting at verse 9. History merely repeats itself. It has all been done before. Nothing under the sun is truly new. Sometimes people say, here is something new, but actually it is old. Nothing is ever truly new. And that's basically what I was stating as far as the charagma being used in ancient Rome. This isn't a new thing. This isn't our first rodeo with this. And we do all understand that reincarnation is in the scriptures. We see that this right here, modern day America, aka Mystery Babylon, this is the reincarnation of Rome. Our spirits are just in brand new bodies now. We've done this before. Some of us have already gotten this mark in the past. And you're probably going to get it again because you're stiff-necked and you still haven't learned and you're still in denial as to what the actual mark is itself. So as we saw in Ecclesiastes, chapter 1, verses 9 and 10, nothing is new under the sun. And that's why it states here, once again, in this last paragraph, therefore, individuals did not generally volunteer for the charagma out of personal desire, but were forced into a situation where accepting it was the only way to survive within Roman social and economic system. That was the past. This is how it was in ancient Rome, where if you didn't have the charagma, that seal, that particular mark on certain documents, you were locked out of participating in just everyday social, in the everyday social, Roman social and economic system. And then it also says refusal came at the cost of one's livelihood and potentially one's life. And that's what we prepare ourselves for. We understand that refusal of it this time around is not going to be any different than what it was in ancient Rome. Refusal this time around as well is going to lead possibly to imprisonment and or death. And that is the reality of it. Unless you plan on getting this, more than likely, you are going to face imprisonment and death. And this is why we hope and we pray to the Most High, Yahweh Bashem and Yahweh Shai, that we are of that number, that we are covered in that, in the blood, to protect us from this. So we can also take a look at Ecclesiastes 3 and 15, just to really bring home the point here. And I'll close with this as a matter of fact. Ecclesiastes 3 and 15, and it says, that which hath been is now, and that which is to be hath already been, and Alahayim requireth that which is past. And I'll read that in the NLT. What is happening now has happened before, and what will happen in the future has happened before, because Alahayim makes the same things happen over and over again. I pray this has been edifying and reaches the ears it's supposed to reach. Shalom.